Bob,
Dina.
we were talking about caffeine not long ago, and so I'm having a little caffeine as we are going to continue a little conversation here about caffeine, specifically a source of caffeine that comes in our pre-workout supplements or our pre-workout shakes. And we thought we'd pick three NSF certified for sport pre-workout formulas to compare and contrast, specifically touching on the caffeine element to highlight the differences and some of the nuances. Because I think classically, when a lot of us think about pre workout formula or a pre workout supplement, it's like, oh, yeah, the caffeine. But they're all just like so many other products and supplements out there. There's so many differences between the formulations. And then for us, if we're competing, training, even recreational level, I mean, you can sometimes get some funky things in your pre-workout. And so just, again, educating our listeners and helping them to really be more diligent in what they choose to use as a pre-workout, especially if you are a caffeine fan, or maybe you need to steer clear of caffeine because you're sensitive to it. So, Bob, where should we start with our three products that we selected for today?
Yeah, I kind of feel like since we're talking about pre-workout, the history, not that I'm going to give you a history lesson, but this is where my mind goes when I hear pre-workout because they've been on the market for decades, right? But I feel like pre-workout traditionally back in the days, check, was more of a more bodybuilding reference, right? Pre-workouts maybe came in liquid form that were poked in certain places, if you know where I'm going, if I'm referencing bodybuilding, and certain pre-workouts could have been in the formulation of possible HGH, testosterone, those kind of things, right? So I just want to kind of give that little, oh, that's where we were and kind of where we're going or where we're at and where we're going, because now we're seeing pre-workouts, it kind of deviated a little bit. And now pre-workouts, the way I thought about it about 20 years ago was like, oh, you want to get jacked, right?
Uh-huh.
So for our listeners that don't know what that is, that's getting like serious, just muscle pump, right? Just jacked, right? Anyway, those are back to my college days. Yeah, Dina, kiss the biceps. Dina,
No,
Dina is
I don't think
flexing her
there's any
bicep and
jacked
kissing her
happening over
bicep.
here.
But then now where we are now is the pre-workout, the whole aura with it is, oh, well, now it's more of a caffeine thing, right? So we kind of progress. And I just kind of want to let our listeners know that there has been a progression in this whole pre-workout term. So now we're talking about, oh, finding that edge that we want to get more amped, right? So instead of jacked, I replaced jacked with amped. So now I'm getting
Okay.
amped. And I think there was actually, and it may still be on the market, a drink called amped. Anyway,
Oh, yeah.
I digress. So I think kind of what we're looking at is pre-workout powders, drinks, whatever it is now we're looking at what is going to help us feel amped or awake or maybe helping with performance. And obviously we're taking the road of caffeine. But here's the thing, the reason why we chose three and well, one, because we should actually do a search one day, Dina, to see actually how many pre-workouts are on the market. That would
Oh,
be
wow.
fascinating, right? We've
Yeah.
only chose three because, well, we only wanted to do three because we can get, I mean, the list goes on and on, right? But I think we've chosen these three to show you the very diverse ingredients that are being chosen and added to certain pre-workouts. But I also just want to kind of say really quick, because we've done episodes on this, D, and I know we have, but I just want to reaffirm with our listeners the reason why we selected three that are NSF certified for sport is because they have undergone third-party certification and testing to make sure kind of what's in it is in it, and there are no banned substances or anything, like that we
Yep.
we need we should be worrying about. Even though we are not professional athletes, we should be still worrying about that. So I just wanted to say that. But no, I'm super excited about these three because we know these. Like I feel like a lot of athletes have known these brands or maybe have heard of these brands before, right? So
Yeah.
let's dive into the first one, and if you don't mind, unless you want to start with more.
No, I think that's good. I was just thinking of Bob when I thought about pre-workouts. Yeah, like that's for the bodybuilders, not for an
Yeah,
endurance
right,
athlete. And then,
right.
so it is cool. Like it is for anyone, but obviously looking at what is in it, which is why we're talking about this today, is
Exactly.
important. But yeah, I just was thinking of that. Like I never used a pre-workout until, not too long ago, relatively speaking. And
Yeah.
so,
And
yeah,
there are different, so we're not just talking about caffeine anymore either, right? That's the interesting
yeah,
thing. If we were just talking about caffeine, you could listen to our previous episode on caffeine because we list a lot of different places you can get caffeine from. So
yeah,
we're not just talking like about an energy drink here. These pre-workouts actually are now combining different elements and ingredients that hopefully are cohesive in their interactions in the body in addition to caffeine, right? So
yeah,
that's the whole pre-workout thing is it's not just caffeine, it's anymore, right? So that's
yeah.
why I feel like the three that we've chosen here, they've got a couple things going on, which I think are kind of cool for us to discuss.
Yeah, and we'll just highlight some of these differences, Bob, because we could honestly spend probably an hour on
Oh yeah.
each
Oh
product,
yeah.
but just, yeah. So I think we should start with the one you've personally used so you can
Yeah.
add your own flair to it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and so the first one is from Clean Athlete, and just by the way, that's a such a smart marketing ploy there, or not ploy, but opportunity to name your company Clean Athlete. It's with a K instead of a C, but Clean Athlete. All their products are NSF certified, so fantastic. At least they undergo those certifications and that testing. But yeah, this one is their pre-workout, and it has. So we're gonna. Well, Dee, are we gonna put this somewhere? So like when we're talking about this, we're gonna pop it in our Patreon account
Yeah,
so people.
we have a special table and image that we're going to put over in our Patreon account for our paid members.
Perfect. So we'll
Yeah.
we'll highlight, obviously we'll talk about everything, but if you want to find it, head on over to patreon.com/ISN podcast. So here's what we've got going on for the Clean Athlete pre-workout. So it has 75 milligrams of caffeine per serving, or we chose the sachet, the 10-gram sachet. And here's what I think we need to know. I mean, the flavor, they have one flavor. I'm going to be honest, it tastes okay. It's not my favorite. It tastes okay. I've had a lot of athletes feedback. It seems to be 50-50 on the taste, but and I can attest to this, it works, right? It actually, it delivers what it needs to deliver in terms of the improving cognitive functioning, cognitive feeling. But let's dive into the ingredients. So we see with the Clean Athlete with the lemon tea flavor, which is their only flavor, I think to kind of really bring up the caffeine comes from green. It's called Pure Calf, which is a trademark caffeine. It comes from green coffee bean extract. And I'm seeing a lot of this pop up. I'm sure you are too, D, with kind of getting almost away from the standard caffeine anhydrous, which is made in a lab, and seeing a lot more of these green tea extracts or green tea or green coffee bean extracts. These are
Yeah.
becoming uber popular these days. So we've got 75 milligrams from this green coffee bean extract. Now, 75 milligrams, depending, if you're a coffee drinker, that could be a cup of coffee. Of course, it depends on what kind of coffee, the bean, the roast, everything, right? But that's probably about a pretty standard cup of coffee. So again, I'm seeing a lot of these pre-workouts starting to lower the dosage of caffeine because they're putting additional things in there to not just be a stimulant, if you will. So true to this nature of what I'm saying is in addition to this pure or this green coffee bean extract, Clean Athlete is also putting in this beetroot. It's called True beetroot extract. So now we have nitrates, of which we have discussed on a previous podcast. And, nitrates benefiting vasodilation, so opening the arteries, improving blood flow a little bit more. So now we're seeing the combination of this green coffee bean extract with beetroot extract. So now we're seeing kind of a double whammy here in terms of a possible performance benefits, right? And I
Yeah.
say possible because we know both of those compounds work in the body, but I have found just real life. Sometimes it doesn't work as well, one athlete versus another athlete, right? So we
Okay.
have to take in those individual considerations.
Let me ask you a question, Bob, on behalf of the listeners. Is caffeine caffeine?
Mm,
Meaning, if I have the same number of milligrams from a synthetic
mm.
caffeine versus the green coffee bean extract, is it same, same?
Well, on a higher level, no, because one is lab based and one is
Yeah,
food based, to be honest with you. And I will tell you real life, I have had athletes respond very differently from a lab made, so caffeine anhydrous, which is just caffeine powder basically, in versus a food base, so green tea extract or green coffee bean extract. I find in real life that there is less of a curve coming down, so less of a, less of a spike and then less of a drop in a food-based caffeine source. So again, the
yeah,
coffee bean extract or the tea extract, I think it's a little bit, I'm going to use the word safer, just because you don't have that crash and burn effect.
yeah,
But I mean, that's me. Whenever possible, I mean, my thing is I try to stay away from caffeine anhydrous with what I do with athletes, only because just in case there is sensitivity to that.
yeah,
But also, there are other benefits of
yeah.
coffee bean extract and green tea extract. So
Right.
now we're talking antioxidants, possible anti-inflammatories. So better bang for your buck
Yeah.
when it comes to that.
I agree. And I think it kind of relates to things we've talked about before. Like if you just look at a label and you see 50 grams of carb, well, what's the source of those carbs? And similarly with the caffeine intake or content is like the number, okay, that's helpful to know your threshold and goal, but also looking at the source is helpful
Mhm.
since there are sensitivities, subtleties around that. And yeah, some of these sources are definitely offering us a lot more than just the caffeine.
Absolutely. And I wanted to, I mean, there's a couple of other ingredients in this clean athlete one. So there's some sodium, there's some vitamin C, and then there's just a little bit of carbohydrates in terms of sugar. But if I can, if you'll let me, Dee, I want to go to the other ingredients part because
Yeah,
I feel like a lot of our listeners skip over that, right? A lot of the
yeah,
athletes I work with, they just don't even think it's there. And that could be important for some food intolerances, maybe some food allergies. So let's just highlight what the other ingredients are in the Clean Athlete pre-workout. So the other ingredients list organic cane sugar. And that is, you can see that because in the label it says includes 2 grams of added sugars. It also has natural flavors, citric acid, malic acid, and stevia leaf extract. So I'm not going to grade that, but I'm going to look at that. And for the most part, as long as someone doesn't have a stevia, intolerance or sensitivity, I'd say,
mhm,
you know what? Doesn't really fly high on my radar in terms of having any negative effects, potentially. I mean,
yeah,
obviously, it depends on somebody's gut health and digestive issues and everything. But
yeah.
yeah, anything to add to that?
Unless we want to talk costs, I don't know if that's
Oh yeah,
helpful
let's throw that
or
out there. Yeah, I mean, maybe even just per serving, because there's, how
yeah.
companies get into the whole different sizes. Is it a sachet? Is it a scoop? What size scoop? How about the, let me finish this one off and we'll let you do the next one. So per
Okay.
serving, and this is coming from their website, per serving, it's $1.97 per serving.
Okay.
So that kind of gives you
Okay.
an idea. Okay,
All right.
on to the next one, D.
Ooh, well, the next one, Gnarly Nutrition. This is a product I have tried in 2023 when I was training for my 100 back then. And so I dinked around with this product before my long runs, and I actually really enjoyed the flavors. So they have two
Hmm.
flavors, Bob, and they have a third one without caffeine, but we're just talking about the caffeinated versions. Mango and strawberry lemonade. And I used the strawberry lemonade. I quite enjoyed it. The caffeine content might be the reason why, but there are some
Oh,
other goodies in this product, Bob. So the one we were just talking about for reference, 75 milligrams. This one, Bob, has 180
more than double,
milligrams.
more than double.
Yep. And it is a green tea leaf source of caffeine in contrast to the one we were just talking about from Clean Athlete, which is a green coffee bean. So, still a more natural source of caffeine, which is really interesting to keep in mind when we are talking about maybe lab based or lab synthetically created. This one is pretty different than the one we were just talking about, which is the reason why we're bringing up all of this. Like, pay attention. Not only do we have this big doozy of a caffeine hit in a serving of gnarly pre workout, but we also get some branch chain amino acids, citrulline malate. We get beta alanine and ginseng root powder. Now, some of these we've talked about in previous episodes, some we have not yet, but there is quite a lot to this pre-workout that can be helpful for supporting, the things that you're looking for to get out of your workout. I won't go on there because I
Hmm.
don't think we were going to break down all of the ingredients at length.
Right, right.
Ingredient wise, other than those main compounds, it is flavored with stevia leaf, just like the one we were talking about. And then they
Hmm.
have some coloring from beetroot and beta carotene and a few other ingredients here. Not sure how you feel about these, Bob. Silicon dioxide, and there's calcium silicate in there, silicate in there, citric acid. I don't have much opinion on those. I mean, I've not had anyone have difficulty with those other ingredients. I think
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
some of it's from mixability, right?
yeah, that's what
So,
it is. It's
yeah,
that's food science. I mean,
yeah,
some ingredients. I feel like when you put sugar in something like Clean Athlete
yeah,
did, I feel like you don't need as many. I mean, listen, we're not food scientists, right? So
yeah,
we don't understand these. We look at it from a standpoint, from a lens of food intolerances. Is something really going to piss off your guts? Is something,
yeah,
triggering certain things in your body? But I've never seen those trigger anything.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to mention the cost too. It's actually
Hmm.
a buck 63 per serving. This is from the
Okay.
Gnarly website. If you were just to
Hmm.
purchase the canister, and you get 30 servings, so it's a little bit less expensive than the Clean Athlete for more caffeine.
Hmm.
What else comes to mind here with Gnarly? What do you want to comment on?
Well, yeah, I mean, again, it's so night and day from the clean athlete.
Yeah,
And that's,
yeah,
again, to your point, this is why we're bringing this up because now we've got branched chain amino acids.
uh-huh,
We've got citrulline malate, which can help ATP production. We've got beta alanine, which I mean, there's so many things. Even the Asian ginseng, which is not caffeine, but it helps with alertness. So there's so many
yeah,
different things in here, right?
yep, yep,
In addition to the double, more than double the caffeine. So I feel like,
yeah,
just bringing that up, I feel like you really need to know what you're looking for, right?
hmm,
And it's not, this is a big lesson that I take home from this before we get into our last one. The big lesson is, well, it's not just about caffeine content. Because if I was just looking at Clean Athlete versus Gnarly pre-workout, I'd be like, oh, well, if I need more caffeine, I'm going to Gnarly because it has double the amount of caffeine, more than double. But you have to look at the other things like, well, what else am I using this pre-workout for? Are there other
yeah,
things? Like, am I an ultra runner? Is it the middle of the night? Am I trying to
ex
stay more alert? You know what I mean?
yeah.
Am I a basketball player and I just want to take something at halftime to get through the second half? What are we doing here? What are we
What are we
using this
doing?
stuff for? Yeah.
Exactly. And like the beta alanine content, there are
Hmm.
those that are super, super sensitive to beta alanine. And they're
Yeah.
like, oh my God, this caffeine totally made my skin tingle. And it's like,
Hmm.
actually, it was another ingredient in this product
Yeah. Yeah.
that affected you. So, yeah. So, we're not trying to review the quality of each of these, more highlighting these
Yeah.
nuances. So, I think it's
For
super
sure.
helpful. And even with our third one, which we can move to, Bob, is quite different from the aforementioned two
Oh my gosh.
products.
I
So,
mean, could these three be more night and day
I know.
from each other? It's amazing. Like it's cool, right? But it's
Yeah.
amazing. So this last one comes from Bear Performance Nutrition. It's called their Flight. We're just going to call it pre-workout, but it's their Flight. And this one is 200 milligrams of caffeine per serving. So now we went from low to high,
Yep.
and the caffeine source is caffeine anhydrous. So remember we were talking earlier on the caffeine anhydrous, which is made in a lab versus like more of a natural coffee bean or tea leaf extract. There are four flavors: prickly pear, pink lemonade, blue raspberry, and mango. And this one, again, looking at the ingredients, D, I mean, aside from the 200 milligrams of caffeine, there is like, I'm going to get lost in these ingredients. And listeners, please pardon me really quick, but there's L-citrulline, which I mentioned just previously can help with ATP production. There's carnosine, beta alanine. So we just talked about beta alanine. There's betaine anhydrous, which we talked about in a previous episode. There's N-acetyl L-tyrosine. There's taurine. I've never heard of this before, toothed club moss. So that's a Chinese herb. It's got to be a Chinese herb because it
Yeah.
sounds like an herb, right?
Yeah.
And then there's black pepper extract. That has to be added I'm guessing those are usually added, like bioperine or black pepper are usually added to help the absorption of something. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna guess without doing any research, that's got to help the absorption of this tooth club moss,
Yep.
is my guess. And
Yeah.
just purely an educated guess. But like I said, I mean, this has a host of additional ingredients. Again, to what you said, what do you need, right? I mean, do you really need the beta alanine, or do you need the betaine, or do you need the L-citrulline? Like, what do you need? But I kind of feel like I need to go to the other ingredients really quick, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Yep.
The other ingredients here, natural flavors, which we see that a lot these days, citric acid, sodium bicarbonate, which is interesting. I won't go down that path, but I'm wondering why that's in there. It just must be a different type of salt because there is sodium in this product also. Calcium silicate, because there's a little bit of calcium in here. Malic acid. Here's where the rubber meets the road for me, D.
Yeah.
It has stevia. It also has sucralose. And I am so public on my view on sucralose, it's not even funny. I do not like sucralose in products. It can severely disrupt the microbiome. I know it's sweet. I know it. I know food manufacturers. I get it. It's easy to use. It's cheaper. I totally get that. But please look out for the microbiome in athletes. This is a huge red flag for me, D. I don't care what company it is, huge red flag. I do not like
Yeah.
sucralose. I will not recommend a product that has sucralose.
So how do you feel?
I think I should kind of get to the point, right?
I'm
I
just
do
kidding.
not feel strongly about sucralose.
Well, yeah, I
Well,
mean,
I'm sorry
it's
to interrupt. That's
notable.
kind of the cool thing about us being a
Oh,
non-sponsored
I
podcast,
know.
right?
You just lay it out there
We're
and
gonna lay it out there,
we
listeners. I
lay
hope
it
you
out.
appreciate that. Yeah.
So yeah, it is very notable. And I would wonder, I mean, I will put this in my to try list in the future, even though what you just
Please
said, Bob,
do.
but
Please
I'm just
do.
curious with all, it's kind of like the soup that has 49 ingredients. Like, what
Yeah.
upset my stomach here? Was it,
Yeah.
and so I'm not dissing this product. Definitely the caffeine content is very high. And like we
hmm
mentioned, it is they don't mention any other source. So we think it's a synthetic source. But when you
hmm
throw all these other things in, I'm not sure how we're going to feel. So,
Yeah.
but that's
Uh,
why we try stuff
I
and
kind of
to
agree.
be
Yeah.
informed.
And
So,
listen, we're not on their website. We're not reading the marketing claims either. So we don't know. We don't know
no,
what their
yeah,
marketing efforts are.
yeah,
We don't know. Like we don't know the purpose of these things. But
yeah.
if we don't know, that probably means you don't know either, listeners, unless you're doing a ton of research, right? But to that point, Dee, excuse me, when you try it, here's what I was thinking. When you said, "Oh yeah, I'm going to try this," yes, please, and report back to me at least. But I look at this and I'm like, hey. What if you just did one of two things with this product? What if one, you dropped the caffeine completely out just to see what all the other things, kind of how that made you
Yeah,
feel? Or two, let's bring the caffeine down to not such a high dose. So maybe it's around
yeah,
100 milligrams.
yeah.
Because again, what we're seeing in this evolution of pre-workouts is the caffeine is starting to decrease. The caffeine content is starting to decrease while we're seeing these other beneficial ingredients also increase. So
Mhm.
my question is, do we really need that much caffeine, or are these ancillary ingredients actually going to promote positive physiological adaptations just as well, even with a lower
Interesting.
dose of caffeine?
Yeah, yeah. Very good, Bob. Well, cost-wise, we're looking at a buck 50 per
hmm
serving. So it is definitely the cheapest of the three that we're talking about for the content of the caffeine you get. However, keeping in mind it is a different source of caffeine. So the more synthetic, the less expensive.
hmm
And then, yeah, getting all those other things in, whether we need them or not. So, gosh, Bob, this is super interesting. And hopefully, our listeners are getting the sense here that, ooh, we look at labels and we note
yes.
source of caffeine content, what else is in it, what are the other ingredients, how am I using it, and what am I looking for?
And again, if it's too confusing, just reach out to us, right? I mean, we would love your interaction in our Patreon community. So you can head on over to patreon.com/ISN podcast. We have a couple different, membership levels. One is free, so you can interact with us, that which would be fantastic. Ask us some questions. And we have a couple paid memberships, which just basically help us keep this podcast going because again, we are sponsor free, so we get to say whatever we want, like we witnessed today with Mr. Sibahar speaking his mind. But no, I mean, that's the beauty of this is we want to interact with you. I think Dina, you said we're gonna put this
Yeah,
table. And yeah, so we'll put this table in Patreon so you can kind of see
yeah,
what we were referencing because I think it's important just to reiterate and to sum it up to you. I think it's really important to, express the concern of look farther. Don't just look at the supplement facts, look down into the
yeah,
ingredients or the other ingredients because it's these days there are so many products on the market that can disrupt our biome and digestive health. I think we really need to be a little more aware and be more smarter as consumers.
yeah. Sounds good, Bob. Well, thanks, listeners, for joining us for this episode, and we will catch you on our next one.